बीजेपी के राम राज्य में बहुजनों को वानर नहीं बनाया जा रहा है। सिर्फ जो वो पूछ नहीं था, वो पूछ लगाई जा रही है। नो रियल इंडिया के मेरे सभी साथियों और फॉलोअर्स को मेरा जय भीम और नमो बुद्धाया। To all my friends and followers, my sincere Jai Bhim and Namo Buddhaya. In this video, I want to share about 100 to 120 years of history to show how backward castes, the fourth in the rung of the five-tier hierarchy of the Hindu fold, have been fooled over the last 120 years, 120, 140 years. The reason I want to do this is because there is suddenly a lot of focus on the BJP government, and that it is the government that wants to create a Rama Raj, a kingdom of Rama, a very Hindutva oriented country. And that's why, and that is the only time that backward castes are getting affected. However, I want to prove through this video that backward castes have been turned into monkeys. The vanara sena that Rama had already, long back. All the BJP government is doing is pinning the tail that was not on them. The reason I also bring this because it's also very surprising if you were to compare India's history and realize that Jyotiba Phule came onto the scene of India between like 1860 and by 1873 he had actually created Satya Shodhak Samaj, the society of truth seekers. So having such a Shudra leader so far way back and having him and his wife Savitribai Phule being so successful that they could open up schools for Shudras and also open up orphanages and everything seems to me be an irony that they are not the community, OBC are not the community that are better developed than, let's say, SC, ST, Dalit community. Because Dr. Ambedkar doesn't come onto the picture of Indian political scene until about 1915, 1920, much more firmly after he returns back from America. So this made me wonder as to what has happened over these last 120 years, and I would like to share that with you today. Like I said, Satya Shodhak Samaj was created in 1873. Jyotiba Phule was the president of it. Brahmin hegemony was questioned. Vedas, authority of the Vedas was questioned. Jyotiba Phule and Savitribai Phule themselves opened schools, especially for girls, because they were at that point in time, per Hindu Brahmin code, women are not allowed to get educated. So even if today there is a Brahmin woman who is educated, she has reason to thank Savitribai Phule, the first teacher of India. It was not their community nor their social revolutionists who brought about the change which could allow women to get educated, even Brahmin women. Something not to forget. You got to pay respect and due where it is due. Moving on, about 1890 is when Jyotiba Phule passed away and Savitribai Phule took over. And she still ran a tight ship. She made sure that the Satya Shodhak Samaj's vision, principles were all adhered. However, by after her demise, there was a little loss of momentum for Satya Shodhak Samaj. So in early 1900s, when it was almost on the decline, Shahu Maharaj, who ruled the princely state of Kolhapur, he realized the necessity to support and help organizations like this. And also, he was the first king to put up a reservation where 50% of his government posts under his princely kingdom were allocated for the depressed classes, including OBC. So while hearing all this, it still feels like the OBC should have developed and moved forward. But this is where I think around 1930s is where the tide changes. The president of Satya Shodhak Samaj in 1935-36 was a Keshavrao Jayade. This president, Keshavrao Jayade, wanted to actually take Satya Shodhak Samaj and merge into Indian National Congress. Dr. Ambedkar warned him against doing that, saying that that would be the downfall of the Satya Shodhak Samaj. But Keshavrao Jayade did not listen to him and went and merged into Indian National Congress. At the point of merging into Indian National Congress in Maharashtra, so that's the only state we're talking about, Indian National Congress had about 318 members. That was its whole strength. And Satyashodak Samaj had at least 100,000 members. So it is already a little, it already doesn't seem right that Keshavrao Jayade would take Satyashodak Samaj and merge into Indian National Congress. If anything, it should have been the other way around. Well, so anyways, so Satyashodak Samaj is dissolved, and the only thing left now is the Indian National Congress. Apart from bringing about 100,000 Satyashodak members into Indian National Congress, Keshavrao Jayade continues his outreach and bringing more and more people into Indian National Congress, to the effect that by the time he is kicked out, by the way, he's kicked out in about 2 or 3 years, he has built up a Congress party, Indian National Congress group in Maharashtra from 318 to 312,000 people. Just to make sure, Indian National Congress is the original Brahmin party. It was created by Brahmins and it is to this day controlled by Brahmins. So in this sense, don't just look at it as two parties. It was basically Brahmins kind of taking over all of these OBC people, and suddenly they have the strength and they are in the leadership roles. And the one president who actually brought in all those people from Satyashodak Samaj got kicked out. So I wanted to show this as the first point where OBCs have started being fooled and being trounced by Indian National Congress as a party. And this is in addition to the whole Hindu history from Brahminical Hindu history from like millennia, where Shudras are already forced, servile, they can't have any property, they can't be educated, they can't hold arms, and they have absolutely no rights. All their whole purpose and the reason that they exist is to serve Brahmins. So Indian National Congress, by doing all of this, established that very same thing, and it was the manifestation of a Brahminical ideology that Shudras are servile. So Indian National Congress sits on the top, and all these OBC are now underneath them. So it's a great fulfillment of the Manusmriti. The next thing that happens is right around independence time, or like a year before India's independence, and it is December 1946. Mind you that India has not yet been partitioned, so India as such is a whole, and while there is a proposal of partition on the table, nothing is written in stone yet. So on December 1946, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, who becomes the future first president of India, brings about an objective resolution, and I'm going to actually read the objective resolution here. It is the sixth point in the objective resolution presented on December 1946. It says, wherein adequate safeguards shall be provided for minorities, backward and tribal areas, and depressed and other backward classes. So there is an objective resolution which says that safeguards will be provided for depressed classes and backward classes. So depressed classes, for one, is very clearly identified as SC, ST. And backward classes in this sense is a gimmick here. Indian National Congress is already trying to confuse people, preferably per Dr. Ambedkar, this should have been clearly defined as backward castes, because this backward classes kind of opens it up for a broad range of other upper caste communities also kind of sliding in, and backward class as such that is understood by the world is mostly economic, not caste-based ranking. So this is in itself is a little I can't get an English word, but this itself is a little kutra. Kutra means it's already a deception, is what I mean to say here. So this was still okay. There is a safeguard. There is this objective resolution. But what then happens is a year from now, after India gets independence in August 15th, 1947, and the day before that midnight Pakistan is partitioned off. So that does happen. And then afterwards, Nehru, when actually it comes to the constitution building, opposes the objective resolution he himself brought up, and doesn't allow for this statement, which says that safeguards would be put for backward classes, to come into the constitution in a similar way as Dr. Ambedkar was able to put safeguards for SC and ST people, Dalits, and tribals. Dr. Ambedkar was not very happy about it, and when he actually questioned the Indian National Congress government and Nehru, he was shot down by saying that you represent and are a leader of SC/ST people. You already acknowledged that, so please stay in your line. You are not the leader of backward castes. Gandhi is the only leader of backward castes, so he and Indian National Congress will decide whether backward castes class, which will get any kind of safeguards or not. So one of the things we want to understand here is what changed between December of 1946 to December of 1947. And as I mentioned, the thing that changed is India broke up into Pakistan and India. When India was still a whole, so Indian National Congress had trouble with had opposition, not trouble, had opposition with Muslim League and also other organized Muslim groups. However, and for that they needed a huge body, a Hindu vote bloc, and they had to always take care of OBC because OBC Shudras form about 52% to 55% of the Hindu population. So it can be easily surmised that this breakup of India into Pakistan and India, and actually Muslim League and all organized Muslim groups leaving to Pakistan, did not leave much opposition for Indian National Congress, wherein they had to take care of anybody. They could be a little more heavy-handed. And that's the reason that we can surmise that Indian National Congress, and Nehru in particular, went back on his statement. Now, when Dr. Ambedkar still questioned as to why they were going back and not providing OBCs with the safeguards that they duly deserve, one of the things Dr. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru said was that, well, it's kind of hard to identify who the OBC are. It's kind of hazy. So why, if you put that into the constitution, it's going to be a mess. Now, a smart person would think that, well, if you can't identify OBC, shouldn't that be the first thing you do? And you would do that in a census. And as far as British government was there, their law already said that census would take caste into consideration on the census forms. So you would think that Nehru would keep that going, and actually when the next census date, which would have been 1951, comes around, they would take a census and they would actually identify who these backward castes are, and they would actually provide them the safeguards that were promised in the objective resolution. However, we all know that rather than doing that, Jawaharlal Nehru actually changes the law in such a way that the census since 1951 to today, and now possibly even in 2021, has no caste-based census done. Again, another setback for OBC, because to this day, the reason people say, well, OBC can get reservations or due safeguards is because we don't know who they are. We never had a census. But the person who actually prevented such a census from happening was Nehru. This was the main reason where Dr. Ambedkar thought that the community was not being served well, which is why he resigned from the cabinet of Nehru, from Nehru's cabinet. In fact, this is the reason why Nehru proposes a commission to actually do that, a study on figuring out who these backward castes or whatnot, but not really in the form of a census, but just a larger commission to it's almost like appeasing kind of thing. And that's where Kaka Kalekar Commission comes into picture. The funny part of Kaka Kalekar Commission is that they do find that OBC are kind of not taken care of, they are in a destitute situation. But when the report finally reaches the president and Nehru kind of talk first and realize that this report is in fact going to push us to actually provide safeguards. So they actually have Kaka Kalekar, the commissioner, issue a letter saying that as being the commissioner, he actually doesn't actually approve the report of the commission. So Nehru, it's almost like a hung jury kind of thing. Well, if the commissioner himself doesn't approve of the report, we can't go forward. So Kaka Kalekar Commission just becomes a appeasing and then no action kind of a report. And it's a good thing for OBC folks to realize that to this day, not one not one leader, not even an OBC leader, has ever resigned from the cabinet or even a parliamentary membership role for the sake of OBC. It is only Dr. Ambedkar who has actually resigned for the safeguards, resigned for OBC to keeping their well-being in his mind. However, by late 1970s, early 80s, I'm a little hazy on the dates, but I'll put them once I research on the video itself. Mandal Commission is proposed, and the commission takes over the same thing that Kaka Kalekar's commission did. Indira Gandhi is the prime minister up until 1984 when she is assassinated, but she doesn't actually implement that. It's only the party after that under Vishwanath Pratap Singh, VP Singh, that they actually implement the Mandal Commission's recommended reservations. In this case, though, the Supreme Court just overreached its power and instead of saying whether it was constitutional or not, decided to just legislate how Mandal Commission related reservation for OBC was to be applied. So again, this is another drawback for OBC folks. And the final thing is both Indian National Congress and BJP have realized that OBC have waken up. They've realized kind of how the history has worked out or worked against them. And they're becoming a little more smarter with regards to reservations, knowing who their real leader is in terms of Dr. Ambedkar and everything. This is where the religion comes into the picture. This is where Babri Masjid was started to kind of keep people's eye off of Mandal Commission, and also a request for census at some point. Whenever there is a request for census is when you see things like these come up. Babri Masjid, or for that matter, even today in last year when there was no need for anything like this, NRC, CAA, and all those things had come up. And now everybody suddenly is polarized because through NRC, the government is saying, well, if you're a Muslim, that's when we may ask you for more documentation. So everybody to feel safe are more aligning and more taking over that Hindu identity or whatnot, because they have now put a fear in you that they've put a fear in you that if you don't align with Hindutva and Hindu agenda, then you might be also on the receiving end of strict questioning and other things. So you're much more happier to be on the Hindu side of the equation. So again, this Ramaraj and everything that BJP is bringing is not the first time OBC are being fooled. As I have shown, most of the fooling of OBC and converting them into monkeys, and in Hindi there is a saying, "Nach Raja Nach," means dance boy dance, like a monkey, is the doing of the parties that have already been in place, which is the only other party, Indian National Congress. So they have actually already pushed OBC, Shudras, especially because they were leaderless. SC and ST are a little better off. At least many of us understand Dr. Ambedkar, or we have finally understood and really, really follow his principles. But OBC have been late to the game. So, especially in the case of OBC, Indian National Congress has already made OBC into monkeys. This blatant Ramarajya statement by BJP is the next step, is like flaunting and saying you're not only a monkey in psychologically, we're actually going to physically make you a monkey, stick a tail on you and make you climb up Babri Masjid and take it down. That's what a monkey does. It climbs up and tears things down. So that's where I keep trying to this is why I thought this was a very important thing for us to know, that it's not all about BJP. BJP is reaping the benefits of what has happened over the last 100 years. But you got to really, really understand your history as to where this started, when this started, so that you can build a better future. You can realize who your allies are. You can realize also who your enemies are, strategies they have used in the past, so you avoid falling for them in the future. The first time I'm ever veering into talking about OBC and that history. So if it is long or choppy, let me know. I'm sure I'll make other videos on this topic. But as usual, I'm available for your questions, and I'm easily accessible on Instagram and YouTube, wherever you see this video, or Facebook. So please reach out to me. Let's have a dialogue going. I appreciate you listening. Thank you so much. Jai Bhim. Namo Buddhaya.